Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is my review for the Knick Season 1, Episode 2, Mr. Paris Shoes. And I wasn't planning on actually reviewing this show weekly for you guys, but I'm going to. I really love this episode. You know, this episode kind of determined if I would or not. And this show now has a huge, recurring storyline. There's a lot of stuff going on, so really want to talk about it. I really want to get into it. And overall, I love this episode. I thought this was a great episode. I love that this episode focused not as much on John. Even though John is our main character, we focused a lot more on Algernon because Algernon, after all, we didn't see to the last 15 minutes of last week's episode, you know, the premiere. I love last week's premiere, was really looking forward to this episode, and it definitely did not disappoint because this episode was absolutely fantastic, and I really loved the way they did this episode, and I just thought this episode was just very well done, in my opinion. I really liked that, definitely. A lot of things I really like about this episode. Especially the beginning of the episode. I really like the way they started off this episode. In fact, it's pretty blunt the way they start out. Basically, we see Algernon waking up, but also we see the life of Cordelia. It's kind of trying to, contrast the home life of Cornelia and, with that of Algernon. Now, Algernon, basically, Cordelia, the difference between them is that Cordelia enjoys a soft bed in a tiny row home, but Algernon is stuck in this faded, low-income tenement building for black people where the sink pours yellow water. And, I mean, it really fits with the time period. Again, one of the things the show does very well is fitting in its time period. It knows its setting, and I really like the way they did that, definitely. I thought that was very good. So, yeah, definitely I thought the show did a very good job of doing that. That's one of the things I really enjoyed, and, yeah, so I definitely really enjoyed that. So there are a couple other things to acknowledge here, though, because Cornelia is actually fighting her own form of casual bigotry. She's a woman given with a position of power among the hospital's executive staff. She and Algernon actually have very different ways of dealing with being looked down upon. She's still green when it comes to this thing and gets outraged, and, Algernon says, I expect these things. You're upset because you don't, but it's not clear. But it's not clear if his method is the better one. They don't really tell us who to agree with, and I like that. It's not like they want, we want you to agree with this person, but don't agree with this person. I really love the way in the beginning of the episode, they really contrast the lives between Algernon and Cordelia, because, Algernon's life is very much, very sad and everything, because not only is he, he's not just, annoyed by, the bugs and everything, he's kind of tortured by his neighbors. His neighbors are very rude to him, because his neighbors are not black, and they're very rude to him, and they're very mean to him, and he has a lot of issues with his neighbors, definitely. He does not like his neighbors at all, and, yeah, he just does not like his neighbors very much at all. So, I felt really bad for Algernon, definitely, in this scene. I really like that we saw more of Cornelia, though, because I really liked, as I said in this episode, they really were trying to show the contrast between the two of them. Also, Mr. Paris Shoes, that is supposed to reference, Algernon, which I will get to when we talk about it. But, we then see John and, we see John, Bertram, and we see John, Bertram, and who else do we see? And Barrow. They're all going in, and Galinger, they're all in the surgery, in the theater. Once again, as I said, before, I said this last week, what they do is they have people actually watch their surgery in a theater. So basically, Bertram is tasked with cauterizing an incision, but while he's doing that, there's an electrical shortage, and the patient actually ends up catching on fire, which was huge. The nurse throws water on the fire. If she's electrocuted and ends up dying, and there are literally a million better ways to go. So, obviously, that's not a good thing at all. I mean, that was really surprising. I was not expecting that at all to happen, and that was just, in my opinion, that was extremely surprising, and I really was not expecting that. And I thought that was a really great scene because part of this episode had to do with, collecting money and having enough money for the Knick because they're very concerned about the electricity and things like that. So yeah, basically, we find out that Barrow has actually been pocketing money from the Robertsons and the, sensing out on things such as electrical wiring. Basically, he is now really in a bind because he has to pay to rewire the Knick, but he's already spent all the money from the kickback to compensate. He keeps walking around the hospital opening the window drapes, and what ends up happening with him is that he is actually being, he kind of has this issue with these gangsters. He really has a big issue with them. You know, they really want a lot of money, and this very much reminded me of like Borak Empire. I mean, really, they were trying to make this a lot. I don't know if that was the intent to make this like Borak Empire, but if that's really what they were trying to do, then they did a very good job of doing that, because they really they did a really good episode of trying to make this like Borak. You know, they did a really good job of trying to make this like Borak Empire. Again, I don't know if that was the intent, but it seemed like it was, because they were trying to make this a lot like Borak Empire, and if that's what they were trying to do, then they did a very good job of doing that, because I really believed it was like Borak Empire. I really did. So yeah, I thought that was definitely very interesting. So basically, you know, I definitely thought that was very interesting. There's more to that also. Basically, following a bro beating from both John and Cornelia, he demands a redo from the weathered immigrant contractors who chuckle grimly, remind him that he skimpered on proper installation in the first place, and it's actually revealed that he is deeply indebted to a slimy loan shark named Bunky. We meet this guy Bunky, and he pocketed some of the Robertsons' money for himself. So he's barely able to afford getting the place wired correctly, so he doesn't know how he can fix this without blowing his cover. So obviously, this is really interesting, because now we know that Barrow is actually working with these gangsters, and I think that's definitely very interesting that he's working with them, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this is going to go, definitely. I think that's definitely very cool, in my opinion. I'm looking forward to that, definitely. So we then see John's drug habits, which were, that was something we explored in the last episode. And basically, Algernon is utterly slid in by John and Galinger. He establishes his own secret clinic in the hospital's furnace room, presumably for the express purposes of helping black New Yorkers. That's what he wants to do. He wants to help them with that. So basically what he decides to do is, after this happens, Cornelia finds Algernon. She can't find Algernon. She doesn't know where he is. She does end up finding him, walking out of the basement. And basically, of course, being a black doctor in the early 1900s, Cornelia is outraged. But as far as John is concerned, Algernon is just a fancy party trick that the Knick is using to get money from the Robertsons. Because remember, the only reason that, they had told him to do this was so they had enough money to actually fund this hospital, make this hospital work. That's the only reason that Algernon is there right now. That's very important. That's very important to keep in mind there. So Bertram seems very sweet and is actually legitimately intrigued by Algernon and his European surgical skills. Algernon actually realizes that black patients are being turned away at the Knick, so he turns his basement office into his secret medical clinic for them, and I just thought that was really sweet that he ended up doing that. Basically, what he decided to do was, we see this woman who has, like, an injured arm, basically, and, she comes into the Knick, and Algernon ends up fixing her up, cleaning her up a little bit, and I was happy that he did this, because it really showed that he, actually some people do care what he's doing, and I really like that. Basically, he ends up, it was definitely very interesting what ended up happening with him. I thought that was definitely very interesting. What does end up we'll get to what happened with him, after, but, basically, I thought that was definitely very interesting. So we then see, so yeah, that ends up happening, and then what happens after that? We then see, basically, that, Barrow manages to buy time in pathetically small increments, while John would rather risk sabotaging himself and the entire hospital, and, basically, the episode comes full circle in two parallel acts of violence. The first of which is Bunky ripping one of Barrow's teeth out as a warning, and then it's followed by Algernon, and I thought this was really cool. It becomes a nifty, it becomes like a very cool alternative to the Robertson's chat over breakfast. We see like a huge fight breaking out with Algernon and everything. Almy and Bedger find their strongest observations in those tense, uncertain situations, unfolding in near real time, promising further complications to come. He's bullied by the same man as before. He begs him up before abruptly felling him with one punch. And that was just really, really big, because it shows that he is not a pussy at all. He actually, he is willing to fight. He will fight whoever is gonna, hurt him, and I thought that was actually very well done. And, yeah, so I thought, I really liked that scene, thought that was definitely very well done, and I really enjoyed that. So, basically, what else happened after this? We see that, so yeah, basically, the other big thing in this episode is that John is actually pressuring Barrow for more cadavers, because practicing surgery on a corpse before attempting on a live person is a good idea. So Barrow, being the cheap, lying douchebag that he is, suggests experimenting on pigs. He keeps saying, use the pigs, use the pigs. I feel like Barrow definitely is going to be the big villain of the show. John is sort of an anti-hero, definitely. Like, you don't know whether you should root for him or not root for him. He's a very good anti-hero, and that's one of the things I love about anti-heroes. You never know whether you should root for them or not, and I really like that. They're trying to make him an anti-hero. I really do like that a lot. But, you know, they're trying to figure out what to do there, definitely. And, yeah, I thought that was definitely very interesting, in my opinion. Really, really enjoyed that. Really good stuff there. So, the only other thing to talk about, we'll talk about two other things. Basically, remember Sister Harriet? Sister Harriet, you know, one of the sisters there. She is actually, we find out, performing abortions in the tenement slums for women in the early 1900s. So think about this. It's the early 1900s, and she's a nun, and she's performing these, you know, these surgery, but it's not like a surgery of, like, you know, it's for abortion. And this is a nun that's doing this, so I think that's really cool that the show did something like that. I was not expecting them to go that far, and I like that they did this. I like that they took a risk. It was a risk, and it was a good risk, because it paid off well. I like this twist. I like the way the show is going, definitely, with that twist. I like where that's headed, and I really do enjoy that, in my opinion. I thought that was definitely very well done, and I really did enjoy that. There is one other, so yeah, I thought that was a good twist, and I'm looking forward to seeing where that's gonna go, you know, if people are gonna find out she's performing these, abortions, because I don't think people are gonna be okay with it. If someone finds out that she was doing this, they're obviously, I don't think, going to be okay with this. I don't think they're gonna be okay if they find out that she's doing this. I don't think they're going to be. I just don't think they are. So the other thing to talk about is basically that, what ends up happening after this is there's also, Catherine Christensen, who is Jules' wife. She ends up visiting John at the Knick. She feels very responsible for not being able to ease her husband's burdens. And basically we find out actually something very interesting about his character. She says, blame is easy, truth is harder. You know, John tells her that. And in his reassurance, she was a good wife and did everything right. And we actually see an instance, basically we see that she did everything right. But the truth in this case is that nothing, you know, Catherine might have arranged could have turned Jules from this dark path once. He adopted death as his own personal failing. So he killed himself simply because he was just so dark, and he was obsessed with the idea of death and things like that, definitely. So that's part of the reason why Jules really did this to himself. He really did this to himself, and I thought that was a very interesting scene, because it's kind of like us realizing that nothing really, he didn't cause anything. She didn't cause anything to happen. He really just did this to himself. So, I mean, that definitely is very interesting. I'm really looking forward to seeing where that's going to go. And the last thing to talk about is Nurse Elkins. Of course, remember last week, you know, she had to inject cocaine into John's dick. You know, she did do that. Well, he ended up apologizing for that, but it turns out that she's not ignoring him for whatever reason. And he's very surprised that she's not ignoring him. Of course, I'm surprised, you know, definitely. So he recognized this, confronts her in a way that is surprisingly honest, and she saw behind the curtain, and what she saw could hurt her career, his career. And, you know, basically, what he's more concerned about is that she's going to tell someone. That's what he's more concerned about. She doesn't want him to tell anyone, you know, he doesn't want her to tell anyone, basically because, you know, he has a cocaine addiction, and he could end up getting himself fired if someone finds out, definitely. Even though they used cocaine on the patients, he could still get himself fired. So, he really is worried that she's going to tell someone about that. So, it's going to be interesting to see if she does end up telling someone about that, definitely. And the last thing to talk about, basically, is we see that he ends up, he ends up going right back to his favorite opium den, and is definitely back on track with his medication. You know, we see a girl there that he just had sex with, and, yeah, that's basically how the episode ended. So, overall, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought this episode was very good, in my opinion. A lot of stuff to talk about. The first thing is, what is going to happen with Algernon? Of course, you know, Algernon, he is working in this secret medical clinic. Are the other doctors going to find out about this? I'm wondering if they'll want to integrate, possibly, you know, integrate, them into, they might want to, you know, actually integrate, Algernon into the, doctorate, things like that. And now it seems like Bertram actually really does care about Algernon, so maybe he'll do something. I don't know. We'll have to see. Barrow, I don't think this is going to work out well for Barrow at all. He is secretly a gangster. Obviously, someone is going to have to find out about this eventually. He's secretly a gangster. It's not going to be good for him in the long run. I'm sure John or someone is going to find out. Definitely, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Barrow. I'm very interested in seeing what's going to happen there. The other thing I thought was very interesting was the scene where Catherine visited John and we found out there was nothing wrong with Jules. Are we going to start to get more flashbacks? I mean, we know that John looked up to Jules like he was because Jules was really his best friend if you think about it. And, Jules really, John really cared about Jules. Jules meant the world to John. So, do you think there's going to be, do you think that John and Jules, do you think that John's going to keep having these flashbacks of Jules? Do you think this is going to keep happening? I don't know. We'll have to see what happens there. I'm thinking he is going to keep having these flashbacks of Jules, but I'm not for certain. I'm just pretty sure he is. But after this episode, I really do enjoy it. I think it's a very good episode. I like seeing the comparisons between Algernon and Cornelia in this. I did like that a lot. Also, Sister Harriet. Are people going to find out she's performing abortions? I mean, it's the early 1900s, so she's a nun, so obviously that's a pretty ballsy move what she's doing there. And is Nurse Elkins going to tell someone about John's addiction? John is very concerned that she's going to tell someone. I'm very interested to see if she's actually going to end up telling someone. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens there. But overall, I love this episode. Thought this episode was very, very good. I really love the twist of Barrow, being a gangster. I really love all the twists in this episode. I think they did a very good job with that. And also, after this episode, pretty much John is an anti-hero. I like that about this episode. Also, Algernon. What do you guys think of Algernon being bullied? I mean, this episode really got us to care for Algernon. I think after this episode, Algernon's probably my favorite character. I mean, especially because we got to see how he's bullied a lot, and people don't really treat him like a man. They treat him like some object, And this is the 1900s, so racism is definitely still a big part of the world, obviously, and, especially someone like Algernon who is a doctor, they don't think of him seriously. They can't really take him seriously because it's the 1900s and they just can't take him seriously at this point. But I really enjoyed this episode. Thought this was another great episode. Great second episode. Absolutely loved it. Let me know what you guys saw of this episode. That's it, my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. See you guys in my next video, which is going to be for actually another movie review. Yes, I will be doing another movie review for you guys. But my review probably won't be up till, I'd say 11 o'clock tonight because the movie I'm going to be reviewing to you is very long. I'm seeing it at 6 o'clock tonight. And you guys are not going to see my review till after that. So my review for Outlander, unfortunately, guys, will not be up till tomorrow because this movie will not probably be over till 10 o'clock or something like that. So we'll have to see. But that's it for this review. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys in my next review. Okay, and see you guys in my next review, which will be for that. So I will see you guys for that. I'm not going to tell you guys what the movie is, but I'll see you guys in my next review. Okay, bye.